Love and rockets. As the applause began to die down, Amos stood up and held up his arms to quiet the room before speaking. I'd like to thank our guest for that moving performance. He paused long enough to allow another polite round of applause before continuing. I'm sure we'd all agree that her tale, though sorrowful and tragic in the end, has stirred our hearts. But it also raises many questions. So, with Sir Marguerite's kind permission, I'd like to throw open the floor to my chapter mates for questions for our guest. He paused again, scanning round the room, nodding briefly to acknowledge people's interests, before offering the floor to Tamar. Tamar stood up slowly, taking a moment to clear her throat, before she put her question to the bard. I'm sure I speak for many when I thank you for the beautiful performance, noble lady. It was certainly moving. But on to matters of faith. You said at the start that you believe that your song shows how true love comes only from the virtues. Now it seems to me that loyalty might easily be confused for love. Indeed, I think your song would have moistened just as many eyes if it had spoken of loyalty. Likewise, it is easy to see how glory might come from courage. But I wondered if you could explain to me what role the other virtues play in love and glory. In particular, my own interest is in the virtue of prosperity. What role does the vital ideal of hard work play in your canon? The Inquisitor's question was direct and seemed challenging, and a quiet murmur spread across the hall. The troubadour looked down at the instrument in her hands, as if unsure of herself. The pause grew longer, the whispering louder, and then, with the flick of her wrist across the string of her instrument, she unleashed a harsh chord to silence the room. My Earl, Balian de Ranhild, is blessed with the service of a loyal yeofolk. This good yeofolk works to keep his hall prepared and fed. She rises before sun-up to clean the grates and light the fires. When nobles are stirring in their beds, she is hard at work cooking bread in preparation for the fast to be broken. She waits on the high table at every meal. She works tirelessly throughout the day. She is the rock on which our house's castle stands. My question to my fellow priests is this: why does she do this? What motivates this woman to work so hard? The Inquisitor spread her hands, bemused. For the sake of prosperity, she responded, but I don't... Her voice trailed off, as she realized the troubadour was firmly shaking her head. Is it loyalty to your house that motivates this virtuous woman? Asked one of the guardians. Is it the glory of your house that drives her? Suggested another. Neither, Marguerite exclaimed with obvious delight. The lady served another house before ours, but it was destroyed. We took her in barely a year ago when the barons fell. She came to us alone, with just her 4 children in tow. It must be ambition, then, pronounced Ephraim, one of the benefactors. She hopes your earl will ennoble her. Marguerite laughed at that. Not at all. She has asked for no test, and she will not gain the skills she needs to pass one by cleaning grates. Keeping the fire burning is important, but it is rarely glorious, I fear. The murmur returned to the room, as those assembled whispered to each other, each keen to answer the troubadour's riddle. The Dornish woman let them confer for a few moments before she spoke again. My answer is simple. My countrywoman is prosperous, more than any other member of our house. None can question how hard she works, honest graft for which she is fairly rewarded. But she is not motivated by prosperity. In fact, she is not motivated by any of the virtues at all. There was an audible gasp in the room at this, but the woman continued before anyone could interrupt her. Perhaps in Highguard, people are motivated to work simply because the way of virtue tells us that this will speed you through the labyrinth. But not in Dawn. The room was quiet now, deathly quiet. This verged on heresy, and no one was quite sure what their unusual guest would say next. In Dawn, we care about more earthly things. My friend has 4 young children. Her family and her husband were killed by the Druge, so she must raise the 4 of them by herself. She works every hour from sun up to sun down, so that Baliam will feel obliged to provide those children with every advantage he can offer them. In payment for her hard work, her children take lessons alongside the Earl's own daughters, learning how to read and write, how to wield sword and spear. I myself teach the 4 of them how to recite poetry. That woman will be out the other side of the labyrinth, while I'm still working out which is the right entrance to pick. She is so prosperous. But that is not what drives her. What drives her is love. Love for her family. Love for the memory of her lost husband. More than anything else, it is her love for her 4 children that makes her so prosperous. Without that, she would be every bit as lazy as I am. At that, the room broke into laughter. Marguerite bowed low to her hosts. There would be more questions in the morning, no doubt, but she had made her point tonight. The Highborn have come to Dawn to show us the Highborn way in their words and deeds. We should rise to the challenge and send our best troubadours to teach them about Dawn. We send Mael Don Jeon of House Ramis with 50 doses of Liao to urge every troubadour to travel to Highguard and teach them about glory and love. Synod Mandate, Dawn National Assembly. For 2 seasons, the Grey Pilgrims have walked the trods of Dawn, speaking to yeoman and noble alike, asking honest questions about faith and spirituality. Alone of all the other nations of the Empire, the Dornish welcomed this open conversation of faith, relishing the chance to share conversation with the pilgrims as fellow wayfarers. Inspired by the highborn example and proud of their faith and keen to share it, the Dornish offered to return the gift, to send their troubadours to Highguard to show them Dawn's way. The offer has now been taken up. The Dornish have encouraged every troubadour to travel to Highguard to teach them about glory and love, and the Highborn have welcomed them with open arms. A word of caution. The civil service took the unusual step of advising the Imperial Synod to be cautious, warning that this mandate had the potential to make the current conflicts of faith considerably worse. The concern of the Tribune's office was that some Dornish troubadours hold views of love and glory that highborn priests might find questionable at best and heretical at worst. They warned that Dornish priests travelling through Highguard, singing tales of adventure, of romance, of love and glory, risk inflaming opinion in Highguard and the wider Empire. That warning fell on deaf ears. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the suggestion that the road ahead might be dangerous, difficult, and filled with peril failed to dissuade the Dornish troubadours from rising to the challenge. One particularly sardonic member of the civil service is heard to comment that if the Tribune's office had really intended the Dornish assembly to think twice, then it might have been better to warn them that the task they were attempting would be completely straightforward and utterly pedestrian. The Highborn welcome the troubadours of Dawn and any priests of other nations who wish to share with us how the way is followed across the Empire. Kerem of the Chantry, summer solstice, 383YE upheld 269 to 0. However, they were not the only assembly to ignore the civil service warnings. The Highborn Assembly also welcomed the Dornish troubadours, having sent the Grey Pilgrims out into the wider empire to speak to the faithful and help everyone perfect their faith. They welcomed the chance for the troubadours to do likewise. The statement did not pass with a greater majority, but it was notable for strong support it did receive, and the fact that no priest voted against it. And so, despite the ominous warnings, Mael Dongeon of House Remis takes their message across Dorne, gathering the greatest troubadours of the land and challenging them to teach the Highborn about glory and love. A song of love. The Highborn concern with the notion of love and glory has always been that these ideals, while often uplifting, are not one of the 7 virtues that help to speed souls through the labyrinth. The doctrine of 7, an essential part of the doctrines of the Way, says that other qualities may benefit humanity, but lend no aid through the passage of death to rebirth, and some may hinder it. The question has always been whether the Dornish obsession with love and glory leads them astray. This is not the first time in recent years that this question has been put to the Dornish Assembly, however, and it has been robustly answered by them. At the end of 382YE, the Assembly strongly endorsed a mandate clearly laying out the complex relationship between love and glory and the 7 virtues. We, the troubadours of Dorne, recognise that true love and true glory arise from the paths of virtue. Only the truly virtuous can know love or achieve glory. Where we find a noble who truly embodies love or glory, we shall name them alongside the champions of the 7 virtues, and they shall be preeminent in their company as inspirations to all who follow the pilgrim's path. Synod Mandate, Dornish National Assembly. These words were carried to every corner of Dorne by the Earl of Fools and by those priests working with them. With this guidance firmly in mind, the troubadours of Dorne come to Highgarde, spreading out across the 4 territories of Rykos, Cassinea, Necropolis and Bastion, so that they can sing their songs of love and glory in every chapter hall in the nation. Armed with the most beautiful poetry they can recite, the most inspiring music they can perform, and the most epic tales they can recount, the priests of Dorne come to spread the way to Highgarde. Most importantly, they come to repeat the words of the Earl of Fools, that only the truly virtuous can know love or achieve glory, that true love and true glory arise from the paths of virtue, and guided by the words of Kerem of the Chantry, the highborn chapters throw open their doors and make ready to receive their guests. Elaine Silverlark. After the death of Lord Endrick, the exemplar Elaine Silverlark travelled to Bastion in Highgarde. There she sang The Flowers of Auvin outside the Basilica of 7 Doors every evening for a month, and during the day she performed songs and poems exalting the names of the heroes of Dorne. Several prominent priests invited her to speak with them, and she recounted tales not only of Lord Endrick, but of many other knights and nobles of Dorne, praising their courage and pride. Through Elaine, the Highborn Synod came to understand the virtue of Dorne, and appreciate the possibility of bringing the way to her people. There is an obvious comparison between what is happening in Highgarde and the pilgrimage of Elaine Silverlark. On some level, the parallels are likely helping to ensure the generally positive reception the troubadours are receiving. Many of the Dornish priests take the opportunity to visit her basilica in Bastion, and a very small number of them have been allowed an opportunity to play the mandolin that sits in pride of place within its quiet marble halls. This experience has sparked some renewed interest in the arbour of the twin roses proposed by Lady Zaha Aryan Winter last year. a monument celebrating not only the life of the exemplar, but the twin powers of love and glory. A song of glory. To the surprise of some, the troubadours receive a surprisingly warm reception. The highborn have something of a reputation for stone hearts beneath their stern visage, but it is difficult for anyone to hear the beautiful songs of the troubadours and not be moved to tears by them. Only the coldest hearts can sit through a full recital of one of the epic lays from Dornish history and not feel their blood stir. Few people understand the importance of an inspiring narrative better than the highborn, and it is impossible to listen to the greatest troubadours of Dorne and not be inspired. After a performance is complete, the hosts question their Dornish guests at length, asking them about the role of the virtues in the piece they have performed. Not every answer is well received. It is clear that some troubadours do not share ideals endorsed by the Dornish assembly. They disdain any talk of the virtues themselves and make it clear that love and glory are an end in themselves, and crucially, that it matters not how a person attains those things. But for the most part, they are the exception. Most troubadours are more than able to hold their own, regaling their hosts with tales of glorious deeds that were ambitious and courageous in the extreme. They talk about the wisdom of their most glorious weavers, the loyalty and vigilance of their stalwart knights. Their obvious pride in their countryfolk shines forth in every account they deliver, and while some struggle to find a role for prosperity in their tales, most are at pains to point out that every Dornish citizen knows how hard it is to pass a test. Whether it's a test of mettle, a test of ardour, or any other test, Dornish society is based on ambition, on prosperity, they claim. No one is born noble, but everyone aspires to it. Some claim that love and glory are what motivates Dornish folk to be virtuous. Others claim that it is virtuous behaviour that wins them love and glorious acclaim. Some say it is both. Many struggle to articulate some clear philosophical relationship between the virtues and their ideas. But it is obvious to their hosts that most troubadours inspire people to pursue love and glory with their heartfelt oratory, not with their erudite debate. But not every question is so easily answered. The mandate that the Dornish assembly passed also said that where we find a noble who truly embodies love or glory, we shall name them alongside the champions of the seven virtues, and they shall be preeminent in their company as inspirations to all who follow the pilgrim's path. The idea that love and glory should sit alongside the seven virtues, or worse, be preeminent among them, remains a sore point for many highborn who hear it. Hearts and minds. The Dornish troubadours have won over the hearts of most highborn who have been lucky enough to hear them perform, and those who have conversed with them have found them passionate and earnest in their beliefs. Although Highgarde and Dorne are neighbours, although the first empress married a Dornish man and became the monarch of Dorne, there has always been a distance between the two nations. Many highborn inquisitors have questioned the Dornish commitment to the virtues, and for their part the dour reputation of the highborn has done little to endear them to the ardent Dornish spirit. Now, the positive reception of the Grey Pilgrims by the Dornish assembly, and the welcome the highborn have shown the Dornish troubadours, has created an opportunity for the two nations to gain a new understanding, a closer friendship. But the highborn people are not ruled by their hearts alone, but also by their minds. They are moved to tears by the tragic ballads of the troubadours, but ultimately they will judge them not by how they feel about their faith and their tales of love and glory, but how they think about it. Is it really true that true love and true glory can only arise from the paths of virtue, as the Dornish claim? That only the truly virtuous can know love or achieve glory? Many want the answer to be yes. The Grey Pilgrims have received harsh words, or even rough music, when they have sought to share their faith in other nations, and many want to embrace their Dornish cousins as kinfolk. They want to acknowledge the virtue of these people who have shared their own beliefs with as much passion and fervour as any highborn priest can manage. But they refuse to make that decision based on their feelings. Instead, they look to the learned, the wisest and most virtuous among them, to speak on the value of love and glory. There are 3 possible mandates that the Highborn Assembly could pass to answer that question. These 3 mandates are in competition with each other, and the interference of the Wisdom Assembly and the Sword Scholars means that they can only be enacted if they achieve a greater majority in the Assembly. Virtue, love and glory are not virtues. Nobody is in any doubt about that, quite apart from the fact that they are not one of the 7 virtues. There are just simple facts that prove otherwise, like the fact that people cannot be devoted to love and glory, that no one can produce auras of either quality using Liao. But just because they are not virtues doesn't mean that they are not virtuous. As Ephraim of the Four Wells comments, the freeborn are obsessed with honesty. Nobody seriously claims that honesty is a virtue, but it clearly requires great courage and often loyalty to speak the truth. If the Highborn Assembly respects the Dornish ideals of love and glory as part of the way of virtue, then it will bring the 2 nations closer together. The Dornish ideals of love and glory are an important part of the way of virtue, inspiring people to the kind of virtuous behaviour that is desirable for all humanity. We send, named priest, with 50 doses of Liao to spread this insight and encourage highborn citizens to be inspired by the Dornish commitment to high ideals. Synod Mandate, Highborn National Assembly. If this mandate is endorsed, then it will immediately remove the penalty affecting Dornish congregations. Instead, both Highborn and Dornish congregations will be boosted by the shared ideals of faith and kinship, as each seeks to learn from the other. They will gain 1 additional Liao and 2 additional votes for the next 2 seasons. The kinship felt by those highborn who have listened to the music, poetry and stories of the troubadours will be reflected in closer cooperation possible between priests of both nations for the next year. The presence of the Grey Pilgrims on the Trods in Dorne, and the welcome they have received from their Dornish hosts, means that any statement of principle that is passed by the Highborn National Assembly will also come to the attention of the folk of Dorne. As a result, for the next year, statements passed by the Highborn Assembly will also carry the potential to create mandates that the Dornish Assembly could pass. In effect, the Dornish Assembly may gain the chance to support, oppose, or otherwise react to statements and mandates of importance to the Highborn. Likewise, the presence of so many troubadours in Highguard, as they continue to respond to Mael Donjeon's mandate for months to come, means that any statement of principle that is passed by the Dornish National Assembly will also come to the attention of the Highborn. That will give the Highborn Assembly the possibility of being able to support, oppose, or otherwise react to statements and mandates of import to the Dornish for the next year. Other qualities. If love and glory are not virtues, then the doctrine of the 7 virtues is clear that they lend no aid through the passage of death to rebirth. However, it says only that they may hinder the passage. The Highborn Assembly could take the view that the Dornish preoccupation with love and glory are a distraction from the 7 virtues, but they do not ultimately hinder their passage through the labyrinth. The Dornish ideals of love and glory are not part of the way of virtue, but nor are they false virtues that hinder passage through the labyrinth. We send, named priest, with 50 doses of Liao to spread this insight and encourage highborn citizens to accept that few human beings are capable of pursuing the 7 virtues in every word and deed. Synod Mandate, Highborn National Assembly. If this mandate is endorsed, then it will immediately remove the penalty affecting Dornish congregations. Vice. The doctrine of the 7 virtues carries a clear warning. The virtues are not the only qualities that benefit humanity. Other qualities exist, some of which positively hinder your passage. The highborn know that virtue and vice are contagious. A virtuous life leads the faithful to further righteous action, but vile behaviour spreads just as easily if not checked. Is the Dornish infatuation with love and glory an example of the spread of vile behaviour? The highborn assembly could take the view that the Dornish have elevated love and glory above the 7 virtues, and in doing so, they have imperilled their mortal souls. Or they could take the view that these qualities are themselves vile, and actively hinder passage through the labyrinth by passing either of the following mandates. Love and glory can never be virtues, and mortals who pursue them in the place of the 7 virtues will find their souls trapped in the labyrinth as a result. We send, named priest, with 50 doses of liao to spread this insight and encourage highborn citizens to rebuke those who pursue love and glory in place of the 7 virtues. Synod Mandate, Highborn National Assembly. If this mandate is endorsed, then it will immediately remove the penalty affecting Dornish congregations. The Grey Pilgrims will no longer be welcome in Dornish territories, and in practical terms, they will no longer be able to walk the trods in Astolat, Weirwater, or Semaholm. In addition, Dornish and highborn armies will find it almost impossible to fight alongside each other in any military campaign where a Dornish or highborn army are fighting in the same territory. Then both armies will receive a 10% penalty to their ability to attack or defend territory. Participation. Any troubadour who wishes to roleplay that they have been visiting Highguard over the last 3 months is encouraged to create appropriate stories about their experiences, in line with the description above. Likewise, any highborn chapter that wishes to roleplay they have hosted a troubadour or 2 is also encouraged to do so. For the most part, the visit has been peaceful and full of opportunities to discuss matters of faith and enjoy grand songs and stories of heroic love and resounding glory. However, it is also acceptable for your highborn chapter to have been critical of the troubadours, or for your troubadour to have encountered a cool reception from a particular NPC chapter. Your individual story is up to you, but the majority experience will have been broadly positive.